Hey, good morning again, everybody, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I am the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. And today, I would like to start a new series on Matthew chapter 24. So, I understand that if you've been studying eschatology for any amount of time, you have an opinion on Matthew 24, and you've probably heard some good teachings, both maybe what you believe and some other views on Matthew 24. But there is tons out there. Lots has been written. And one of the reasons for that is because this chapter is paradigmatic. It sets the paradigm for eschatology. You know, Jesus, he's in Matthew 24, he's an interpreter of the Old Testament, and he lays the foundation for New Testament eschatology as well. So, really, this is the truth. If we don't understand Matthew 24 properly, our entire eschatology will be absolutely messed up. It really will. Like totally confused. Almost all of the New Testament writers draw from Matthew 24 and Jesus' source in Matthew 24, which are the Old Testament prophets, of course. Excuse me. So, we're going to start a series. We're going to do a verse-by-verse study. Now, not going to necessarily exegete every verse. Some of the verses are pretty self-explanatory, and history bears out their fulfillment very easily. We'll bring some of that out as well. We're at least going to read everything. And we're going to go through this chapter systematically, and I want to really show you that Matthew 24 has been fulfilled. And listen, the reason I take that stance is number one, the entire context, okay? But number two, Jesus' words in Matthew 24:34. He said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation will not pass away until all these things be fulfilled." And I want to deal with his phrase, "this generation," probably really before we even get into the entire chapter, because we must understand what he's drawing from in the phrase "this generation." He's not just pulling this phrase out of his hat because it sounds kind of good, and it can't be used to describe a race of people, etc. We're going to look from the Old Testament scriptures and establish a biblical precedent for Jesus using "this generation," the phrase, okay? He uses it many times. So we're going to look at that. And we're also going to do some groundwork, lay some foundation from the previous chapters in Matthew before we even really get into the text. So this is just an introductory video, you guys. My interpretation and the paradigm from which I will be exegeting this book for you is a fulfilled chapter. Matthew 24, in my opinion, is fulfilled. Like I said, Jesus said it. We're going to prove he meant what he said. And we're going to show you very systematically and biblically that everything in this chapter finds a first century fulfillment. We just need to look at the words through the lens of a first century Hebrew audience. This is the key, guys. Now, what I want to say to end off this introductory video is where I want to go with the next few videos is establishing a certain question that I want to pose to you, okay? And I want to establish the answer to that. In Matthew 24, verse 1, this is what it says. Jesus came out from the temple and was going away when his disciples came up to point out the temple buildings to him. Now, ask yourself. I think this is very important. This is maybe a question that you have never thought of. It's probably overlooked by many students, and I overlooked it for years. Why did the disciples, upon leaving the temple, okay, the temple area, so something happened back there that they're coming up, they're walking away from the temple area. We know they go sit on the Mount of Olives. But why do his disciples point out the temple and the buildings? You ever think about this? You think Jesus has never seen this stuff? You know, he's been to Jerusalem at least 3 times a year his entire life, right? He knows what these buildings look like. He knows the size of them. He knows the architecture. I mean, why did the disciples point out these buildings? And then Jesus' immediate response is that they're coming down. Every stone's coming down. So it's almost like the disciples are defensive in a way, and then Jesus turns around and gives them this amazing prophecy that all these things you're showing me, all these things you want me to see, they're coming down. And why is this? Why is this context here? And that's what I want to dig into in the first few videos. Specifically, again, why the disciples felt the need to point out to Jesus these buildings that he has seen dozens and dozens of times, guys. This is important. And I promise you, if you've never looked into this, this will set the paradigm and it will set the context for the entire chapter, okay? It's very important. So, guys, this is going to be awesome. I'm super excited to do this study. I've put in this has been just a major focus for me for many years before I came to a fulfilled eschatology paradigm, before I believed the true finished work of Jesus Christ. I already saw Matthew 24 as fulfilled, but in the last couple of years, obviously new light and a greater light has been shed upon that for me, and I'm excited to share what I see with you. Listen, I'm not saying I have this all figured out. There's definitely more that can be added to me regarding Matthew 24, but I am excited to share it with you, and I welcome your comments, your questions, your disagreements, as long as they're in the spirit of love, the spirit of Christ, and that we dialogue in order to understand and not necessarily just to argue. So if you have some questions or have some comments, listen, give them to me, back them up with some scriptures, and let's be a little bit studious and a little bit scholarly about what we talk about, okay? And that'll bring glory to God. So guys, next time we'll pick up Matthew 24 verse 1, and we'll look back at the context to help us to understand this amazing chapter and help us to understand biblical prophecy in both the Old and New Testaments. So we'll see you next time on Answers on Eschatology, guys, and bye for now.